Fullbring is one of Bleach's most fascinating abilities, giving its user the power to manipulate the souls contained within matter itself. Yes, when the Lost Agent arc rolled around, it brought with it one of the most substantial additions to the lore of Bleach yet. That everything, even inanimate objects, contains a soul, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant. Thanks to their powers, Fullbringers can pull on these souls in order to manipulate the object, even changing its physical form. And when a Fullbringer gains an affinity for a particular object that's close to them personally, they can dramatically alter its form and gain incredible powers and abilities unique to them. These powers are usually born from a strong emotion, and Riruka Dokugamine even goes so far as to call Fullbring the ability of love, explaining that it bestows a Fullbringer with the strength to draw out the maximum power from something a person loves, meaning Fullbring has the capacity to take many different forms and present a wide variety of abilities unlike anything we've ever really seen before in Bleach. So, in today's video, we're going to take a look at every Fullbring in the Bleach manga, including their enhanced forms as well, activated once Execution steals Ichigo's power for themselves. Before we get started on the video, guys, if you enjoyed this when you're done with it, make sure to hit the subscribe button down below to help support the channel and stay up to date with all of my future videos as well. And if you haven't yet done already, go and check out my other channel, Mr. Tomo Talks Games, and maybe hit subscribe over there as well if you like what you see. It really would be massively appreciated and help get the channel off the ground, as at the moment about 74% of people watching aren't currently subscribed, so if you do like what you see over there and you want to hit subscribe, that would be an enormous help, and I would greatly appreciate it. Let's start things off with the leader of Execution and the first substitute Shinigami himself. Ginjo Kugo's Fullbring Cross of Scaffold transforms his X-shaped necklace into a massive claymore, which is easily one of the series' coolest weapon designs. Cross of Scaffold looks, though, like a fairly standard, albeit ornately decorated broadsword, save for the fact the sword's hilt actually runs through its guard and effectively into the blade itself, giving it a massively elongated handle. This peculiar design allows Ginjo to, in his own words, eliminate his reach handicap, meaning if an enemy gets in close to avoid the sword's long stature, Ginjo can grab the additional length of the handle to draw his sword into himself and attack at short range. Ginjo's Fullbring has a couple of special abilities, though I've always felt that Cross of Scaffold is kind of one of Bleach's more nebulous weapons in terms of what it can actually do. The sword has the power to generate enormous blades of green energy, which is also seemingly done by gripping the center handle and channeling Ginjo's own Reryoku. Ginjo collects the energy which completely encompasses the entire blade in the shape of a larger bright green sword, and then by swinging the sword downwards, Ginjo can fire the blast at his opponent. But the most prominent, and I'd argue the most nebulous ability of Ginjo's Cross of Scaffold is its power to steal other Fullbring, which is seemingly activated by Ginjo fusing his substitute Shinigami badge with the blade itself, outwardly transforming the blade's appearance as a sinister-looking skull becomes affixed to the guard. You see, Ginjo takes Ichigo's Fullbring, obviously, before having his own Fullbring enhanced by Ichigo's power, so this is an ability inherent to Ginjo himself. And at first I thought maybe this was simply due to the fact that humans and substitute Shinigami can trade powers freely, but this seems to be something that is unique to Ginjo himself, so I'm not entirely sure how that works. But anyway, after stealing Ichigo's Fullbring and using it to enhance his own, Ginjo transforms, garbing himself in a skeletal armor reminiscent of Ichigo's own Fullbring, and Cross of Scaffold becomes a clad-type Fullbring as a result. Cross of Scaffold's actual blade also seems to double in width at least. In his enhanced form, Ginjo's green energy blasts have become even more destructive, and he's become strong enough to casually carve one of Ichigo's brand new Getsuga Tensho blasts in two with a swift wave of his own sword. After stealing some of Ichigo's power and his Reiatsu essentially, Ginjo is even capable of now using Getsuga Tensho himself, effectively copying and mimicking what he's learned from Ichigo's own power. And by extension, the ultimate endpoint of Ginjo stealing Ichigo's power, or some of it anyway, including his latent Shinigami power, means that Ginjo has access to a bankai of sorts, which was of course the secret meaning behind Uryu warning Ichigo that Ginjo might be able to use all of his abilities. Well, that included bankai. Ginjo's unnamed bankai also allows him to use a Sero thanks to the lingering hollow Reiatsu within him, as shown by the colour of Ginjo's eyes. We're following up Ginjo's somewhat convoluted and frankly unexplained Fullbring with one of the simplest in the series. Yet it's also one of the most terrifying powers ever introduced in Bleach. Shukuro Tsukishima's Book of the End is a power we've discussed before on the channel, and with good reason. Not only is it my favourite Fullbring of the lot, but it completely defined an entire arc. It's one of the most broken abilities in Bleach. Book of the End transforms Tsukishima's bookmark into a katana, with the bookmark taking the place of the sword's guard. Book of the End has one primary ability: the power to insert Tsukishima's presence into the past of whoever he cuts. I've said it before many times on the channel that the simpler the central power in Bleach, often the more overpowered it is. After Tsukishima cuts his target with a slash that leaves no visible wound at all, Book of the End begins to quickly take effect. Tsukishima's power doesn't alter time nor the target's memories. Instead, it essentially creates a split history for the target specifically, wherein Tsukishima was literally a part of their life as far as they are concerned. Tsukishima can appear to his target as anyone of note: a family member, a friend, a mentor, or even a lover. The target will unequivocally come to see Tsukishima as that designated person, as somebody who did actually exist in their past. And Tsukishima can seemingly influence an unlimited number of victims at once. It just depends on whether or not he gets the chance to cut them. If necessary, Tsukishima can further adapt Book of the End's power to increase his influence over someone. For example, with regards to Chad and Orihime, they initially only see him as a friend, still someone they cared about, but no one more than that. However, when their faith in Book of the End's lie begins to waver due to the events unfolding around them, Tsukishima decides to up the ante and forces them to believe he is someone truly key to them now, actually overwriting someone they once knew in their lives. Originally, Tsukishima inserted himself into their past as somebody brand new, as himself. Now he is actively trying to erase somebody they knew, someone that had an impact on them, and replace them with him. In Orihime's case, Tsukishima tries to take the place of her brother Sora, and in Chad's case he tries to become Chad's abuelo, the man who gave him his treasured pendant. However, doing so creates a dangerous paradox. This is the riskiest maneuver of Tsukishima's power. Where Tsukishima originally simply inserted himself into their lives as somebody brand new, here their brains are acutely aware that he is overwriting someone they should know, and doing so often leads to the victim's minds simply breaking. By cutting an inanimate object such as the ground beneath his feet, Tsukishima can even use Book of the End to insert himself into the history of the place he's currently standing in. In his battle against Byakuya, Tsukishima does just that, cutting the ground beneath him and making it so he had been to this battlefield before, and had set up numerous traps over the many visits he'd had. Later, by cutting Byakuya's Zanpakuto, Tsukishima became privy to all of its weaknesses, and discovered how to overcome every single one of Senbon Zakura's abilities, including its bankai and its various stages. Perhaps craziest of all, however, is that Book of the End will adapt Tsukishima's own abilities to make good the lie that he's trying to sell. For example, when Tsukishima cuts Byakuya, he inserts himself into Byakuya's past as his mentor, as the man who taught Byakuya everything. However, for this to have been believable in the present day, in the past, Tsukishima would need to be far stronger than he actually is in reality. And so Book of the End bridges that gap, as Tsukishima reveals that he's grown by the same amount Byakuya has, even becoming strong enough to break Byakuya's blade in two. Book of the End is one of the most impossibly powerful abilities in the entire series, yet I also think it's one of the best written, and the way Byakuya eventually overcomes it made perfect sense to me too, resulting in one of my favourite fights of the series. Unfortunately, Tsukishima's Fullbring is never enhanced by Ichigo's powers. I wonder what it would have been capable of if it had. Clearly that was somewhere that Kubo didn't even dare to tread. Riruka Dokugamene's Fullbring is Dollhouse, giving her the ability to move people or objects in or out of anything that she finds to be cute. Riruka's power works slightly differently from the other Fullbringers in that, unlike the rest of them, she doesn't have just one particular object that she loves. Riruka loves lots of different things, and is in constant pursuit of more things to find cute and to fall in love with. Thus, Dollhouse is a power that can technically be used on anything. She doesn't have just one item that she has an affinity with. For example, we see Riruka moving Ichigo into a box that she finds cute in order to facilitate her training, and later she places Ichigo inside a fish tank. But not any ordinary fish tank. Now, normally she wouldn't find a fish tank to be cute, but this is a fish tank with a dog's face slapped on it, and therefore has been made cute enough for Riruka to use. In order to transmit someone or something, Riruka generates a tiny heart, which then attaches to her target before they are forcibly dragged into the dollhouse in question. In order to deactivate her power, Riruka has to sneeze on her target, I'm not sure why, returning them to normal. Also, Riruka's dollhouse can be forcibly deactivated if it's destroyed from the outside, as Tsukishima does to the fish tank. Once her Fullbring is enhanced by Ichigo's power, Riruka gains a few new abilities, as well as a slightly modified outfit. In her enhanced form, Riruka's hat gains a pair of rabbit ears, while she wears a breastplate in the shape of a broken heart, plus her collar and tie combo that dangles over the top. Most prominently, Riruka gains a pair of elongated white gauntlets on her arms and similar looking boots on her legs. During her fight with Rukia, Riruka uses her new Addiction Shot ability to fire a heart at her target, allowing her to instantly move the target into something Riruka finds cute. It seems to me like it's essentially just an expedited version of her original Fullbring power. In her enhanced form, Riruka has one final trick up her sleeve. By stabbing her opponent with her gauntlets, Riruka can move herself into her opponent, treating their body like a dollhouse. Doing so allows Riruka to completely disappear, to the point where the host can no longer even sense her, and neither can the people around them. Despite this, Riruka remains totally conscious, as she hides inside Rukia's body, in a literal sense, even able to listen to her thoughts and control her movements. Again, this is one of the craziest abilities I think we've ever seen in Bleach. How long would this ability last? How long could Riruka stay inside Rukia's body? Whether it's actually in a literal sense or if it's just a kind of metaphysical thing where she kind of exists in her subconscious, I've got absolutely no idea. To be honest, the limits are totally unknown. But when Riruka leaves a target's body, a pair of cartoon doors open on their chest and propel the Fullbringer out, leaving the former host unconscious. The reason why Riruka's contribution in the Thousand Year Blood War arc is such a big deal for her is that the Kyogoku, the Valley of Screams that she hides everyone in, is absolutely not something that she would ever find cute. So she's had to go out of her way to successfully use Dollhouse on something that it shouldn't be used on at all, in order to successfully create a means for everyone to travel to the Royal Palace. Yukio Hans Vorlberner's Fullbring is Invaders Must Die, and is centralised around his prized PSP handheld. Alright, it's never explicitly called a PSP, of course, but That's what it is. As long as the console has enough battery power, Yukio can unleash a shadowy black digitized mass from within that can whisk a target away, drawing them inside the PSP itself. Within Yukio's console exists a totally separate pocket dimension that he has complete control over, a game world, which he can then load the trapped players into. Although the game world itself is desolate and mostly empty, Yukio can freely modify and adapt the world however he pleases. Ginjo uses the game world to help train Ichigo, and Yukio gives them both health bars and a timer to simulate a game. Yukio can load in multiple people at once and even create them totally separate spaces to exist within. Chad is saved into the game by Yukio from the outside, and after talking briefly with Ginjo, he disappears into a new room that Yukio has created for him, with set specifications dialed in to help Chad train to his liking. We even see that the landscape around Chad has been completely built from scratch, transformed into a sort of canyon flats area, along with the requisite heat and weather conditions. Once Orihime arrives, Yukio creates her a table and chairs, and later even builds her a small house, complete with a bed and running water. When Ginjo blinds Ichigo and Orihime attempts to rush to his aid, Yukio seals her within a box that permanently shuts out all power, as per the rules of Yukio's game world, meaning even Orihime's abilities, which trespass on God's domain itself, couldn't do a thing. I mean, talking of absolutely crazy abilities, this is another one that I think goes completely overlooked. This is seemingly unstoppable because Yukio is the absolute god of this world, this game realm that they're all in, and he can do whatever he likes. The game world of Yukio's Fullbring exists on a set of hard and fast rules, much like a game itself, so these cannot be broken by really any force whatsoever so long as they exist within Yukio's world. And again, I have to wonder what the limits are of something like this. Who could Yukio imprison in one of these cages and completely seal off their power? Could it be theoretically anyone, so long as he manages to successfully save them? But anyway, from outside the machine, Yukio can fast forward the training without the player's knowledge, speeding up time within the console to expedite their progress. Even before receiving some of Ichigo's power, Yukio's Fullbring can affect the outside world. He plants a small Space Invaders-style tracker on Ginjo to lead him to their location, which seems to freely exist in the real world, and as a child he created holographic versions of his parents that again existed in the real world. Once Yukio receives some of Ichigo's stolen power, his Fullbring transforms. He gains a pair of mechanized armored gauntlets on his arms, complete with a display console of buttons from which he can control his digital powers. He's also now wearing a pair of headphones too. In this enhanced form, Yukio's Invaders Must Die becomes digital radial invaders, as his game world expands outside the screen. And essentially, Yukio's control now extends to the world around them, and in my opinion becomes a more standard fare shonen power set, and I actually quite like it. Yukio can create entire digital illusions, such as when Ichigo thinks he's defeated Execution, only for them to be revealed to be totally unharmed as the digital facade disappears. Yukio's also capable of creating clones of himself, as well as wielding tangible, digitized bars of light as weaponry in the real world. After placing the various fighters into separate chat rooms, essentially individual pocket dimensions that Yukio has control over, much like the PSP itself, except again now outside, Yukio reveals to Hitsugaya that he can effectively do anything from within, even conjuring an army of monstrous eldritch abominations to attack the captain. However, when Hitsugaya succeeds in freezing the control panel on Yukio's gauntlet, it seems like he's basically rendered useless. Jackie Tristan's Fullbring Dirty Boots is a clad-type power centralized around a pair of boots that she was given by her father when she was a child. Once Jackie activates her Fullbring, she gains an entirely new outfit almost. Her boots elongate, rising all the way up her legs, while a plush white scarf wraps itself around her neck, and at the same time she gains a pair of shoulder pads which link to new long white sleeves on her arms. Finally, she wears a black cap on her head from which a piece of silky fabric dangles in front of the right side of her face. Jackie is a physical fighter and her Fullbring facilitates this. Dirty Boots only has the one ability, and this is, I would say, the rare example of a simple single ability actually being kind of disappointing. The dirtier the boots get, the stronger Jackie's Fullbring becomes. It doesn't matter how the boots become dirty either, whether they are covered in mud, blood, or anything else, simply dirtying up the boots massively enhances Jackie's physical capabilities, allowing her to effortlessly destroy Ichigo's energy attacks with a kick and send Ichigo himself flying. When enhanced with Ichigo's stolen power, the appearance of dirty boots changes dramatically. Jackie's scarf has now become a woolen crop top, covering the upper half of her torso and arms while she wears a black undershirt underneath it. She retains her black cap from before, but the piece of cloth over her face is now gone. Her boots themselves are now covered in an elongated white armour, while what appears to be the original black boots can be seen beneath them. Most curiously, however, are the motorbike engines now affixed to Jackie's body. 2 exhaust ports protrude from her thighs, while a third spews smoke from her shoulder. In this form, Jackie is able to massively amplify her dirty boots, as the exhausts spew a thick black oil, which covers her entire body, increasing her strength and speed to the point where she can puncture an enormous crater in the ground simply by stomping her foot. Despite this, she wasn't able to put a scratch on Renji even after landing a direct hit. Gideko Kutsuzawa's Fullbring Time Tells No Lies is perhaps the most disappointing one in the series, as it had a lot of potential to actually be really cool. Time Tells No Lies is derived from Gideko's cherished antique pocket watch, a family heirloom passed down to him through the generations. Time Tells No Lies allows Gideko to apply certain contracts in the form of timers to designated targets, which operate under specific terms and conditions set by Gideko himself. The breaking of said contracts will incur the wrath of the God of Time, in the form of the all-consuming Flame of Time. For example, Gideko sets a number of contracts to aid with the initial stage of Ichigo's training. One such timer is placed on Ichigo's opponent, Mr. Pork. If the presence of Fullbring is not detected within Ichigo after 15 minutes of the training starting, Mr. Pork will be forcibly transformed into a monster. Following this, Gideko also placed a timer on the Dollhouse itself. So long as Ichigo survives the full 30-minute training session, he is allowed to leave the box. However, should Ichigo or Mr. Pork leave the box before that time is up, Ichigo, Mr. Pork, and the Dollhouse itself would all be incinerated by the Flame of Time. It's a lucky thing then that Gideko seemingly didn't place a timer on the fish tank as Ichigo battled Jackie. This same divine flame reduced a young Gideko's eye to ashes when he attempted to renege on his contract with the God of Time after murdering his wife. Alongside the Fullbring's primary ability of setting contracts, Gideko can actually use his pocket watch as an unlikely weapon, as the watch's numbers materialise and can then be used as ranged weapons themselves. After receiving Ichigo's stolen power, Gideko's Time Tells No Lies takes on a completely new form. Gideko's body is now covered from head to toe in white armour, pieces on his chest and thigh displaying what appear to be arrows in the shape of clock hands. 12 orbs float around Gideko's body in the formation of a clock, although they seem to disappear and reappear at numerous intervals. As he faces off against Kenpachi, Gideko turns a small dial on his chest to the number 3, rapidly transforming him into a gigantic, muscle-bound monstrosity. Gideko rants that the simpler the terms of his contracts, the more powerful they are then manifested, and he claims to have set the terms of this particular contract to simply be an increase of strength, implying that this is the physically strongest he can become. Of course, Kenpachi proceeds to kill him in a single hit, meaning we never really learn the extent of what Gideko's enhanced Fullbring could do, or how it really worked, but it seems it gave him access to his contracts simply at the turn of a dial. It's a shame too, because there must have been so many awesome time-related abilities Kubo could have come up with, but instead, Gideko turns into the Hulk. Moe Shishigiwara's Fullbring is Jackpot Knuckle, and it manifests from a brass knuckle that he wears depicting 3 lucky 7s in a row, as might be found on a slot machine. Shishigiwara's Fullbring is surprisingly dangerous. By punching something with his brass knuckle, Shishigiwara can manipulate the probability of the outcome and tilt the odds in his favour, allowing him to hit a jackpot and scoring the biggest possible win. For example, against Ginjo, Shishigiwara landed a punch on Ginjo's sword and hit the jackpot, giving him the best possible outcome of that clash, resulting in the guard of Ginjo's sword simply snapping off. Shishigiwara's punches are usually pathetically weak, but in his battle with Ikkaku, he lands a punch on Ikkaku's shoulder and hits the jackpot, dislocating the Shinigami's shoulder immediately. Honestly, thinking about it like this, going over the Fullbrings here again, they really do feel like the precursor to the Quincy Shrift in just the way they work. But as their fight continues, Ikkaku witnesses Shishigiwara toppling trees with his otherwise weak punches, and the Fullbringer even snaps Hozokimaru in two with a perfect spin. However, Jackpot Knuckle comes with a huge weakness built in. As is often the case with gambling, the more Shishigiwara punches something, the worse his odds get, and the chances of his hitting the jackpot begin to decrease, until his strikes don't have any bonus impact to them at all. The depiction of Jackpot Knuckle is a bit weird though in chapter 457, however. Earlier in his fight with Ginjo, Shishigiwara somehow causes a chandelier to fall and almost hit his enemy. It's then revealed in chapter 457 that Shishigiwara flipped a coin and it hit the jackpot, meaning the screws of the chandelier just happened to fall out. I'm not sure how this works, and what's weird about it is this would imply that Shishigiwara has control over probability in general, and it isn't simply limited to his brass knuckle and whatever he punches with Jackpot Knuckle itself, meaning instead that he can use any kind of luck determiner to activate his Fullbring. Unless we're meant to believe he punched the chandelier with his brass knuckle, but then what does flipping the coin even have to do with anything? And it's odd as well because the idea of flipping a coin, or doing something else probability related, luck related, never really comes up again. Either way, Jackpot Knuckle isn't enhanced by Ichigo's stolen power, as Ginjo thinks it would be too much trouble to deal with, which is a testament to its ability. Of course, it's also revealed in the Lost Agent arc that Chad is a Fullbringer as well. His Fullbring is one we are much more familiar with, however. Brazo Derecha de Gigante and Brazo Izquierda del Diablo. The source of Chad's Fullbring is in fact his skin, as despite the difficulties the colour of his skin has given him over the years, he feels a great deal of pride in his Mexican heritage, instilled within him thanks to his abuelo. Chad's right arm is covered in a black and red armour, while his left arm is covered in a white and red armour instead. His right arm is mostly used for defensive purposes, though it can generate powerful blasts of energy too in the form of El Directo. That being said, the right arm's shield form is its most famous, as the black and red armour liquefies and then re-solidifies into the shape of a shield, bearing the design of a terrifying Hollow's Maw. The shield form of the right arm is its true shape, and represents Chad's grandfather and the lessons he taught him about strength. Meanwhile, the left arm is used for offensive purposes, featuring a devilish spike protruding from the shoulder. Using this arm massively increases Chad's overall strength and gives him access to his greatest ability, La Muerte. As Chad focuses power into his left arm, energy crackles upon his fingertips before he curls his hand into a fist and delivers a crushing punch that bellows through his target and inflicts an enormous demonic skull-shaped imprint into the surface behind. Ginjo explains to Chad that once Fullbring reaches a certain maturity, they stop evolving, they stop changing, meaning that at least for the time being, this does seem to be the apex of Chad's Fullbring power. And finally, Ichigo also acquires a Fullbring as a result of his training with Execution, though it goes unnamed, despite Ginjo telling Ichigo that he needs to name it. Once his Fullbring is completed, Ichigo's body is covered in a white skeletal armour made up of individual bone-like strips that run the length of his entire body, forming boots beneath his knees and armoured pads on his shoulders. More of the white strips encircle his torso and are tightly packed in here. This intricate design is overlaid atop a black suit, while on his back rests a sheath for his new sword. And speaking of which, Ichigo's newest blade sprouts forth from his substitute Shinigami badge, and is considerably smaller and more compact than his previous swords. In his completed Fullbring, Ichigo is extremely quick, reminiscent of course of his bankai, blitzing Tsukishima and slicing off his arm before he had any idea what was happening. Ichigo is also able to seemingly focus his strength into specific limbs, producing an almighty kick that sent Tsukishima flying before even using Getsuga Tensho as well, unleashing a jagged blast of gold energy from his blade. This version of Getsuga Tensho is a lot smaller than previous versions, though it moves in a very rapid and erratic manner to compensate, making it dangerous and unpredictable. Alright, but that's it for every single Fullbring in the Bleach manga. Of course, the light novels Can't Fear Your Own World reveal a lot more about Fullbring, about where it comes from, and of course about the Fullbringer Ora Michibane, while also confirming that Orihime is a Fullbringer as well, but we'll save all that for another time. This video is running long enough as it is. Let me know down in the comments below, which is your favourite Fullbring in Bleach, which one would you have liked to have seen a little bit more of, which of the enhanced forms acquired after stealing Ichigo's power do you like the best, and which one do you think is the strongest overall, as many of them, not just Book of the End, many of them have some truly crazy and abstract powers that do feel like the precursor to the Shrift. I'd love to know your personal rankings down in the comments too. How similarly do our opinions align, or are they completely off base? Thanks again so very much for watching as always, guys. I hope you took something of value away from today's video. Make sure to hit subscribe if you haven't done already. Go and check out Mr. Tomo Talks Games again if that interests you at all and you'd like to see more from me over there as well. And you want to help me get that channel off the ground. I really do appreciate all of your support. And as always, speaking of support, a massive thank you goes out to everyone supporting me over on Patreon. I really do appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Your support means the absolute world to me. And you too can go and support me over on Patreon as well if you like what I do here on YouTube. It is greatly appreciated. But of course, you absolutely don't have to do that. You simply being here is more than enough. Alright guys, thanks again so very much for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.